If you're a kid that played with Legos, built model planes with your dad, or constructed your own toys, then you're familiar with that feeling of accomplishment that you cannot get anywhere when you work hard to create something that you really wanted. Consumerism, on the other hand, completely subverts this whole learning process and all those feelings you get. And all you do is just go to the store, pay up the money to buy the object. You have to get to the store, pay the money, you get the object, you go home, you open up the box. It's exciting for that few minutes that that object is so new to you. And after that, you really know better for it. So, doing it yourself promises an experience of growth and learning that is, I think, some of the most satisfying stuff for humans. And it's, I think, uncommon today because you don't get to build something from scratch for yourself in today's society anymore, exist as part of the community. And you never really get to, especially as a younger kid, you never get to see something go from start to finish. For example, I had a cheap pre-built computer that just did not cut it for my 14-year-old gaming aspirations. I knew that in order to have a real gaming PC, you needed to go through the process of building and setting up your own computer. It was like a rite of passage. If you're a real PC gamer, you fucking went and built your own PC. So, and obviously building your own computer promised that it was going to be the computer just for you, where you were not going to spend money on extra hard drives or a fancy case that you didn't need, that you were going to spend less money, get that computer that you really wanted, and, you know, at the end of the day, you did have to build it yourself. I ended up first having to convince my dad at the time that I knew what I was doing, because he's like, why are you spending $200 on this piece of electronics that has no freaking use to us? And after convincing him of that, I had to make sure that the parts I was buying were actually compatible with each other, because, you know, it's a big L for a 15-year-old kid to spend $200 on a website for a part that they don't even know if it's going to work. So, you know, having to figure out at least what parts to buy, budgeting yourself, and, you know, that for a 15-year-old kid, that's a pretty challenging thing, and probably pretty healthy, and probably teaches a lot of things before you even get to building the computer. You know, it's a lot of money that you spend on a PC relatively for a 15-year-old. So you are very nervous about how this is going to turn out. And you're taking that risk. You could have spent $200 more, bought it in a store, and just got the computer and played on it like nothing was wrong. But you decided to go through this whole process and doing it yourself. After the parts arrived, and after 3 days of troubleshooting, I finally got my first PC to boot. I cried that first day where I could not get it to work, because the excitement was so, you know, building up so much, and I was finally going to get to play games, all the games that I wanted, and they were going to run great. And then I pressed the button and the computer is like a brick, you know, and it just, you know, really hurt my feelings, and I started crying. I kept messing with it. I cut my finger on one of the case panels. I started bleeding. You know, I fucking put 3 full days into this computer. I sweated over it, and literally blood, sweat, and tears. Literally and after I built it, I realized what that saying really was. It means you put everything you had on the line because you knew that thing had to work. You can't just give up and say, all right, returning all the parts, we're done here, don't work. You know, you don't have that option. You need to make it work. For a 15-year-old kid, I think that's a great experience to go through. So, and when you finally get that first boot, it feels so good. Nothing else feels like that. It wouldn't feel that good when you bought it and put it out the box and plugged it in and turned it on. It wouldn't have felt. But when you know that the only reason that thing is turning on is because you built it correctly, it just feels so great. I could have just bought the computer, got it, boom, played the games, never even thought about it. But because of the things I had to learn in order to build the computer, it changed my perspective on life. It made me get into electronics and change my career path. I learned a lot of stuff about myself and about, you know, the topic at hand that I would have just never learned if I just had my dad buy me a computer. Yeah, I could have even been playing Counter-Strike 3 days earlier, but I didn't. This exact same process, almost like step by step, happened again a few years later for me with building a e-bike. I built a few computers. I built like maybe 3 computers before I built my first e-bike, because that feeling of accomplishment, I wanted it again, so I built more computers. I had fun, genuine fun doing that. But then I ended up doing a lot of research again, and then I had to make sure that everything was going to be compatible. And after careful speculation about the fact that I was going to spend $600 to make my bike motorized, was that really a good idea? Should I just maybe buy an e-bike or just not do this at all? This was gonna improve my life a lot, because now I was gonna get through the city way faster. So I decided to finally pull the trigger, and just like that first time building a computer, it took me 3 days to just get it to work. The battery didn't work for some reason. The motor was hard to actually install into the bicycle, because it was installed in a way where I wasn't used to dealing with that part of the bicycle and opening it up and repairing the middle of it. I didn't know how to do that, and I had to learn all of that just to get it to finally work. And I also had to go and ask a bike shop to help me. So I had to, delegate some of my problems to someone else. And again, I was a little older at this point, but still kind of the same skills are being proving in those aspects. So finally, I got it to work, and that extreme satisfaction comes again every time I would ride that bike. I would feel satisfied that not only, that the reason I'm moving at this speed right now is I decided to take that extra time and take that extra effort and not just buy something where at the fact that you bought something, you expect it to work because you paid someone else to go through this process for you. But here, you're thankful that it works because you did it yourself. I would have came out of that not knowing anything about electric vehicles, not knowing anything about mechanics, not knowing how to repair my own bike. I would have just bought the bike and expected it to work, and if something were to go wrong with that one, I would not have been able to fix it. But the amount of stuff I learned in the process of building these, let's be real here, toys. These were toys because they're really nothing else. There's a mode of transportation. A computer is very useful. I use it every day. I use both every day. But really, I could have gone without. And it's just so satisfying having that end product and knowing that you know the ins and outs of how the hell that thing in your house is working. But it can get too far. And for me, it has gone too far where I will not eat, not drink water, not sleep. And all I will think about is completing this project, building it, finishing it, getting it out. And that's a really unhealthy way to do it. And I think the older I get, when I do something new like this, I learned to enjoy the process and not just try to rush through it and finish it. Now I appreciate the journey that you take to build something like this. That journey is so rewarding and feels great. And so now I take my time, I relax, and I enjoy it. And I will take a break now, because it's not life or death if I get it built right today, I take my time. An example of when I went too far was when the first e-bike I ever built broke down, didn't work good anymore. I decided to fix it, and then I decided to put the same motor on a different bike, and that bike wasn't compatible with the motor, but I decided to force it anyway. And I spent 4 hours screwing in this motor into this bike that wasn't meant to fit this motor. I ended up getting the motor in after 4 hours because I just wouldn't give up. My shoulders hurt, my hands hurt, my brain hurt from doing the repetitive task 4 hours. And in the end, I broke the motor in the process of trying. Now, it's good that I was so persistent, but when you have to force something to work like that, it just never works. You shouldn't force it. It should work on its own. I learned that you don't want to take this hobby too far. And I do want to make it a career, but you don't want to start risking your mental health and your health for just an object you're building. Because in that moment when you're building it, it's everything to you. It's the most important thing. So if anything I want to leave you with is that if you're thinking about doing anything yourself, doing your own house restoration, building something yourself, doing the electricity in your own house, know that it's going to come with a lot of it's going to come with a lot of extra things you didn't expect. When you see a tutorial on YouTube, it's just going to have the basic way to do it, straightforward, nothing extra. But in your case, something will go wrong and you will have to work around it, and it will be frustrating. But you just keep working around it, and you just take all those setbacks, and the better you are at getting past those setbacks, you'll be way better. So eventually you will get it done, and you just gotta trust in yourself that you're gonna keep going. It's really all about the journey of learning and experience that you will get from building something. It's not about the finished product. But of course, I have my computer, my bike here, and I realized that the two things that I use and rely most for in my day-to-day life, I built from scratch. And that's just a really good feeling to know that I'm not just a consumer riding a Mercedes-Benz that someone else built for me that I paid with my hard work. But it's not a fair trade because, listen, if you figured out how to build a Mercedes yourself, you could do it much cheaper than the real thing.